Futures and forex trading contains substantial risk and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Please take a moment to review the full disclaimer. Hello traders, this is Kevin from chartspots.com. In today's video we'll be profiling the DAX and looking forward to the week ahead. Also having a look back what happened the past week, which gave us some nice range and how that compared to what we were expecting. Before we move on to that, let's first have a look at the news of the weekend. As you know, in Germany there was an election a couple of months ago. Since then there is no government formed yet, and this weekend there was an important vote for the Socialist Party to see if they would go ahead or not to continue the talks with the party of Merkel in order to form a government. And that's what that looks like.
642 Stimmen abgegeben, mit Ja haben gestimmt 362,
so it just confirmed that more people voted to go ahead. And what you typically have on this kind of things is people going crazy.
Werden die Bürgerinnen und Bürger dann sagen, ach, die SPD, die macht jetzt nur noch Politik, wenn sie die absolute Mehrheit bekommt. Wir werden die Koalitionsverhandlungen ernsthaft verhandeln.
And then you also have serious people, and in the end, in any political gathering, you cannot leave home before you do this. This happens everywhere in Europe. It's a strange custom. But with that said, the good news and the good tone is set for the week. Let's move on to some more serious things. The economic calendar, looking for next week. We have quite some important economic figures coming out, specifically for Germany. Economic sentiment, manufacturing PMI, but the most important ones are basically the Bank of Japan, who will provide its outlook. Now there is no immediate expectation of them becoming overly hawkish, yet the market can react to anything coming out of Japan, so keep that in mind on these days. And then of course on Thursday we're looking at the ECB interest rate decision. As you can see, the expectation is no change, but as you know, as from this month the asset purchasing program has been decreased by 30 billion, and the most voices out there right now are expecting an announcement of it really ceasing the purchases by September. So this definitely can be a market mover. So Thursday, be aware of what's happening during the day and plan your trades accordingly. We also have GDP for the US, for the UK, which is quite an important figure coming out. So some interesting points this week in terms of economic news. One nice picture I like, of course it's a bit getting outdated since Yellen is moving out, but you have the ultra dove on the left side, Kuroda, laughing all his way to the bank. And on that note, let's move on to the charts. the weekly chart of the DAX. So this prior week we saw an outside week, which is quite interesting on relatively good volume. We're nearing the all-time highs again. In fact, in the aftermarket on Friday we came into this last high volume node, so we're getting very close to breaking that level. What's interesting is the fact that we broke the low of last week, but it was a battle zone during 2 sessions basically. I'll go back to a more granular view. So at the prior week low marked here was the blue line. So on the overnight on the 16th we came down to it and then kind of found support there. This was, I believe, the day where we had one of the ECB members coming out a bit more hawkish than usual, and we got some volatility which was sold off in the afternoon and then some, which brought us in the aftermarket right through this low. The next day we open in range, try to test higher, fail at the mid, go for it again. Have quite a good battle here with some relatively good volume, but we're not accepting the auction below that low, and from there on we start moving upwards. Culminating in Friday, which was quite a strong bullish day. Absolutely no retracements. At 9 o'clock we were opening just below this low volume node, and from the open we had an open drive and never looked back. So it looked to me like short covering going on, potentially included with some new money entering, as we really didn't do any pullback whatsoever, not even touching VWAP throughout the day. As you can see, this is the VWAP line. So that was a very strong finish. Also at the close, which is around here, basically near the high of the day, and in the aftermarket we continued higher, closing out this naked POC from quite a while back. Yep, from here, so that's November 7th. And above is nothing left besides the all-time high. What does concern me about this is this fact. It is kind of a weak low, and what I mean by that is, if we look at the daily, for example, I'll get the profile out of the way. You see this two lows of the 2 days being more or less equal, after which we move up. What I consider a stronger low is, for example, this one here, at the end of the year. Because if you look back, what happens to this weak lows, like we had one over here, similar scenario. So quite a ranging day, but undecisive, closing in the middle. The next day testing it again, and from there move up. But in this case also quite soon we came down again and established a stronger low. Happened here as well, so you had 3-4 tests of the same basic area. In the end we breached that one. We still have some here down as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. That, yeah, I don't like seeing that, to be honest. On the other hand, throughout the week we were pounding on this 50% retracement of this initial drop. Didn't close above it, and then when we opened right on it on Friday, we moved up considerably. So given that context, let's have a look again at the weekly, looking forward. My primary expectation now is that we test the upside the next week, simply by the fact that Friday was such a strong day. So I either expect on Monday a rotational day within range, and then potentially the market needs to make up its mind and either go higher or go back down again. But as we have reached this final high volume node, I would expect at least to test higher, which once we breach this high, some shorts will start to cover, maybe some FOMO traders coming in as well, or in fact we're seeing the next wave of institutional money flowing into the market, which could be the case. We see volume rising as we move up, so that's a good sign. Important areas, nothing really changed compared to last week in terms of the weekly view. So we have this important POC. We also now outside of the value area, so I do expect some continuation. One of my first targets would be somewhere in the neighborhood of this level, so 14,350, somewhere around that. But that's of course on a weekly basis, so don't expect that next week. On the daily, I think the important thing is noticing this potentially weak low, and from there, we had this strong day. Typically we don't fall down the next day. Of course it can happen, but primary expectation is an inside day or continuation. And of course, as a backup plan, you should always consider the other side as well. Looking at the news, it all seems to be positive till now. There might be some hesitation early in the week, as we of course have the ECB on tap. Interesting to note on the statistics front, I've been collecting new data, or rather calculating new probabilities, and on Mondays the statistical probability of having a normal variation day, which means only breaking one side of your initial balance, high or low, is 50% almost, and that's the highest it gets throughout the week. So basically, as from there it decreases until reaching its low point on Friday, where you have a higher probability of trend and neutral days. So that was an interesting discovery I made over the weekend, and I'm taking that with me going forward. Okay, looking at the daily profile, we of course have still these important zones below, but as we couldn't reach them now, I first expect to at least test some higher levels before we come down here again. And of course it is possible that on a weekly basis that this is enough balancing to move to the next area, so we could move into a new trending weekly chart like this and then end up in a new balancing zone. So it's a important point right now. And I think with that said, we covered the important points for this week. If you like this and want to support the channel, please subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you next week.